What's up, YouTube? It's the Action Figure Grader coming back to you with a vintage collection market update. I've got some really interesting ones in this batch. We've got graded items. We've got ungraded 1.0 TVC. I've even got some graded playsets, and I've even got one loose figure. So I've got a nice run here of different items, and I wanted to start first with VC 166, the Mandalorian. And I thought this was an interesting comparison. And I think my logic or my kind of grading thoughts as it pertains to AFA versus collector archive services is very well supported by what I'm going to show you. So this item just sold today, about 40 minutes ago. And I was waiting to do this video until this one sold. So this was an uncirculated 95 grade CAS VC 166 Mandalorian. You can see the grade there. It was just graded last year. So it was uncirculated, so somebody sent in a sealed case. It was graded 95, 90, 95, all right? Now, it was listed at auction at $149.95, and it only had one bid. So I was surprised by that a little bit, but then once I started looking at older data, it doesn't surprise me at all. So I think it's actually right in line with the market. So as you guys know, in the past, what I've mentioned that, and this is not always the case, but sometimes, if you took an apples-to-apples comparison of an AFA graded item and compared it to a collector archive services graded item, or even UKG really, I consider CAS and UKG to usually, not always, but usually be a half a point higher than AFA's grading. So for example, this one was graded uncirculated 95. My argument would be that it would be an uncirculated 9.25 on the modern scale for AFA, or an AFA 90 plus, so that, just a half a point lower. And it's the same, I think, with UKG in general, not always, but there are certain items that I feel like collector archive services grades more harshly than AFA or UKG, that especially being tri-logo, Palitoy tri-logos. They are very, very tough on those. So it's very, very hard to get a near mint grade with them. But anyway, I want to go back now to this VC 166. So this is a collector archive services 95, U95. Now, how does that compare to recent sales data for AFA graded examples? This is a pretty plentiful character. Hasbro has produced this in multiple, manufacturing batches because it's such a high selling character. So there's a lot of examples that are graded for this one. So now if you go to the most recent 95 or 9.5 on the modern scale, this is an uncirculated 9.5 that sold. This one sold for double that price, $300. So that's an AFA U.9.5, excuse me, uncirculated, and it sold for $300 plus $10 shipping. So that to me signifies that a CAS 95 versus an AFA 9.5 on the modern scale, they're not exactly equal in the market's eyes, right? Since they're willing to pay double for an AFA 9.5. But if you look at this one, this is an AFA uncirculated 9.0. And so this, in my opinion, is a slightly lower grade than the CAS version, right? So you would think that this one would sell for less than the CAS one that just sold today. And that's the case. This one sold for $108.99 plus shipping. And so that ends up being about, let's call it $20 to $30 less, maybe a little bit more than this one that just sold for $150. So I think that supports my argument that the market views, at least right now, that could change certainly, depending on how collector archive services grading criteria and how stringent they are moving forward compares to AFA. But at least right now, the market views collector archive services graded items as about a half a point lower than AFA. So this one sold right between the and closer to the U 9.0 than the 9.5. But it's still sold at a premium to this one, about a 10, let's call it 10 or 15% premium to this one. So it's way more information that you probably want, and we'll get back to other data here in a little while in terms of market data. But I wanted to at least talk about that one to start because I think it's an interesting kind of market data point as it relates to how collectors view graded items, AFA versus CAS, at least on the modern items. So I thought you'd find that interesting. One final corollary is that I've noticed that with rare vintage Kenner items, if you got a CAS graded, like let's call it a Red Bar R5, for example, a loose graded Red Bar R5, which is fairly rare and fairly expensive, if that's graded 85 versus an AFA 85, I have not seen a massive difference, if any, in the price that it commands, at least on Facebook. So the rarity of the item is important. Whether it's vintage versus modern is important. But I think that's just kind of some interesting data points there for you. All right, let's get back to the other items in today's video. This was another interesting one, and this was from Jeff's Collectibles Empire. Jeff Jacobs is a collector, a really well-known collector, great guy. I bought from him in the past, trusted seller. He and his team have started grading vintage collection items very regularly. So he had a batch that sold this past week, and he's got a bunch of really epic items right now for sale on eBay at auction. So check it out. Jeff's Collectibles Empire, where my cursor is, Jeff's Collectible Empire. He's got like 30 or 40 just awesome TVC items. And so go take a look at those. They're all at auction. He's a trusted seller. I bought from him many times, mainly vintage stuff, or all vintage stuff. But anyway, this one was an AFA 9.0 Walmart exclusive VC 177 Din Djarin with Child. This was 9.0 in the modern scale. I hope that Jeff's watching this. Jeff, please grade these on the 3-tier grading. You know, I've talked about this in the past. Collectors like the 3-tier grading. I know you got to pay a little bit extra for it, but start your auctions a little bit higher than where you start them. I would much rather have a 3-tier grading scale for these beautiful vintage collection items, but I doubt he watches my channel. But anyway, this one sold for $224.50 plus $15 shipping. And again, this I think also speaks to another data or another kind of collecting viewpoint of mine, that store exclusive vintage collection items in high grade are always going to be in high demand, because Walmart, they ship to their customers like junk. Target, all of these, Amazon, they all ship to their customers in boxes like junk, and they get damaged. And so and also I would think that because they're store exclusives, Hasbro's probably producing these characters in lesser manufacturing quantities than their standard releases, which go all over the place to retail. So this proves it to me that, you know, you got a $15 or $17 original retail price store exclusive, but because it's in high grade, somebody paid $225 for it. So that's why I've tried to focus, for the most part, now that my collecting room is pretty full, I really focus on these store exclusives when I can, and I can find a mint example, because I just think that long term, graded, high grade store exclusives will always be in high demand, and they'll always command a premium. So anyway, I thought that was an interesting data point. Another one that sold here recently, this sold 2 days ago. This was VC34 Jango Fett again. This one sold for $188. Now, he had it in the star case, but he did provide some pictures of Jango Fett outside of the card. At first blush, the front of the card, everything looks in great shape there. Let's take a look at the back. The back looks pretty good. It might have some just minor wear there. Right above the UPC code, you can see some kind of edge rub there. But in general, this was, you know, I'd call it an 85 plus grade Jango Fett, and that sold for $188. I think that's on the low end of the price range for Jango Fett for a near mint example. They've been selling very consistently at $200, $225, $250. I've even seen $300. So whoever got this one, congratulations. That was a great buy, in my opinion. Unpunched, really nice example, and I'd call it an 85 minimum, probably an 85 plus. Here was another lower grade item. This was not uncirculated, so it was a circulated Bastilla Sean, and it was only an 8.0. And we've seen a few 8.0 AFA graded Bastilla Sean sell here recently. This one was listed at $200. It only had one bid with free shipping, but someone was willing to pay $200 for that. And again, I think this is another corollary. And this one was punched too. It wasn't an unpunched example, but I think that nothing against the buyer on this or the seller. It's a beautiful item. I'm not saying it's not, but I will say this, that I think that your chances of finding an example that would grade higher with either AFA or Collector Archive or UKG and pay the same amount or maybe a little bit less, save up for that grading money, you know, but this is the case where someone maybe just didn't want to wait and they were okay with an 8.0. So that's totally fine. The price certainly is great. I mean, for an already graded, fairly high demand figure, that's a great price, $200. But I think that if you took that $200 and applied it towards an unpunched example that's ungraded, you could probably get it for pretty close to that. Maybe not. Maybe I'm crazy. It would not be another vintage collection market update without another Ahsoka. This was a beautiful Ahsoka unpunched US card. It looked to be pretty darn immaculate. It had some kind of just light wave to the card at the bottom. but it sold for a big number, as you'd expect. You know, $600. It's not nearly as high as some of the ones we've seen. Some of them has sold, you know, into the 700 and plus range. So I think that was very fair given the current market environment. Whoever got that for $600 plus only $4 shipping, you can't. I mean, that's pretty good. That's pretty good for, you know, probably an 85 or 85 plus Ahsoka. So here was, you know, going back to the HasLab items, we got another one that just sold on August 15th, so 3 days ago. Now, the photos were dark. So, again, you got to be careful with the yak face VC000. It looked like it had a very light scratch kind of right to the right of the Disney Hasbro logo there on the back. It had quite a bit of card back curve, but I think that could come out in a star case. But the pictures were pretty dark, so it's hard to tell whether this had the manufacturing defect, and I always thought it was a packing defect. But Ryan, who is a subscriber to my channel and comments a lot, so thank you, Ryan, for this information. But he said that more than, you know, he said roughly 85% of these had that card defect with the grooves on the card that I mentioned in the HasLab video I just released. So it was not a packing error. It was an actual manufacturing error that Hasbro caught later. So I believe it was Ryan who watches my channel that mentioned that. So thank you for mentioning that. I did not know that or have heard that before. But anyway, going back to this item, this one sold for $227.50 plus shipping. Again, the pictures were dark, so this is probably a case where I would ask the seller for better photos, especially of that card front, to see if this one suffered from that same you know, manufacturing defect to the card that caused scratches to it or indentations on the card. Again, going back to Jeff Collectible Empire, he had a couple playsets, interestingly, that were graded by AFA. This was only an 8.0, but this is the Jabba's Palace Adventure set. So first time I've seen one of these graded. As you can see in the upper left-hand corner here, it had a little bit of damage. Over here, it had a little bit of damage. Just very, very slight edge wear to each of the corners there. But anyways, an AFA 8.0 on the modern scale. That one sold for $91 plus $15 shipping. I mean, that's a pretty good price. I mean, I can imagine that the grading costs were pretty close to that alone. So, you know, after factoring shipping to and from AFA. So that was probably a loss on the sale for the seller, but maybe I'm wrong. He also had this one, which I do have. I have this one. This is the Walmart exclusive Imperial Tie Fighter. I've got this one signed by the original concept artist on the original Star Wars film. His name is blanking on me now, but he autographed this, and so I had the autograph authenticated, and I had this monstrosity graded by Collector Archive Services. But this is, again, another store exclusive that is tough to find in high grade. But this was an AFA 8.5 modern scale grading. That one sold for $128.49 plus $15 shipping. Again, given how large these are, I can't imagine that they made a lot of money on these two playset sales or vehicle sales. But just some interesting kind of graded vintage collection playset / vehicles that I thought I'd show. Jeff also had this AFA Uncirculated 9.0 Leia Bespin Escape that just came out earlier this year. I'm still waiting on mine to come back from Collector Archive Services. The more I look at this, the more I'm not really excited about getting it back. I mean, it's just such a plain figure and a very lazy figure in my opinion, and that card back is so dark. So I'm not particularly excited about getting this one back, but I am getting it back from Collector Archive. I'd sent in a Big Bad Toy Store collector grade. But anyway, this one was U 9.0. That one sold for $87 plus shipping, so a great price for a U 9.0, fairly recent release. This was a loose figure, incomplete. I wanted to show it though. This is from the SDCC, or not SDCC, the Hasbro Pulse exclusive 501st 3-pack. And this is just the loose ARC Trooper Jesse. It didn't have his weapon or anything, it looked like. It's just the figure with his helmet. But even that sold for $51 plus shipping. So I thought that was an interesting data point. I've gotten requests, just as a side note, I've gotten requests from subscribers to cover more loose, ungraded kind of modern figures or loose, ungraded vintage Kenner. It's just really difficult to do because it's hard to tell condition. It's hard to do apples to apples and show a price and be able to kind of speak somewhat intelligently on it, because it's just so hard to know what really condition they're in. And you know, as you can see here down at the bottom on your left, on the left shin, his right shin, it's got some either paint defects or it's got some, you know, paint scratches. Same on the skirt on the right hand side there. So, you know, who knows how beat up this is or how well cared for this figure was, but someone was still willing to pay $51, which is exactly about a third of where this goes for in a sealed near mint box. You can pick that up in a sealed 3-pack for $150 to $175. Now, I'm not criticizing the buyer on this because everyone's budget's different. I'm just saying that someone paid a third of the price of a near mint plus sealed 3-pack for just a loose, incomplete figure. So that's just food for thought. Pretty crazy. And so another one that Jeff had, this was a rocket firing Boba Fett mail away. This was graded 8.5. It was not uncirculated, which usually these are because they came in mail order boxes that people would ship into AFA and have them open it to get the uncirculated grade. But this one was circulated 8.5. Still a beautiful item, unpunched, really nice. And that one sold for $227.50. I think that's a pretty fair price for it. 9.0 or a 90 grade typically sells in the 300 to 350 range minimum. I've seen it go way higher than that depending on how legitimate the auction was or the sale was, but $227.50 for an 8.5 rocket firing Fett is more than fair. That's a great price to the buyer there, in my opinion. A couple of skiff guards here. I wanted to show Nikto skiff guard. This was a unpunched example, really nice condition overall. It looked like it might have just some very, very minor edge wear. That one sold for $172.50, so another high number for Nikto, and we've covered him in the past, and he's been selling around there. $150 to $175 has been kind of the new Nikto price. New Nikto prices, everyone. It's $150 to $175. It's pretty wild how much that one's gone up. And then at the same time, we had a Weequay unpunched, which typically goes for a lot of money. This one only sold for $109, but it did have some edge wear, some scratches, as you can see on the right-hand side there. I don't know if that's dust or if that's just scratches to the card, but buyers clearly were not willing to risk it, thinking that could clean that card back of any dust. They're thinking that card is got some damage to it. On the back, it also had a sticker over the UPC code, so light edge wear. So let's call that an 80 grade Weequay, and that one sold for $109, and that's probably about right. For a near mint plus, you're talking about $200. So it sold for half that because of the condition. Next was an unpunched Revenge VC64 Princess Leia in her slave outfit. As we know, these things continue to go up, and this one did not disappoint. This one was in excellent condition, really nice near mint plus condition, based on all the photos. I mean, just straight as a board for the card. It had one little tiny nick, and the seller, props to him for actually showing that, but give me a break. This is a 90 grade Revenge Slave Leia all day long in my book, and that one sold for $280. So another big number for the Revenge Leia. That's one I'll probably never get, just given how expensive it's gotten. On the other side of the coin, there was this one. This was a Revenge of the Jedi R2-D2. And this one, to the seller's credit, they include some detailed photos. You can see kind of a light corner ding up there in the upper left hand on the back of the card. Light edge wear all the way around it. So the price reflected that. I mean, it was unpunched. The card actually looked pretty great from the front. It had some minor edge wear, but overall, I'd call that an 80 plus condition, maybe an 85 if the grader's feeling nice and generous. But that one only sold for $66. That's a win. Whoever bought that, that is a great budget buy in my opinion, and congratulations to that winner. But anyway, I know this video was kind of all over the place. I included some graded and some ungraded, as well as thoughts on comparing the grading companies. I hope you don't mind me doing that, but I thought it was important to kind of, now that I had the latest and the greatest data and actually had apples to apples comparisons for AFA versus CAS graded for the exact same figure, I thought it was kind of a cool comparison to look at that. If you're new to the channel, welcome. Thank you so much for watching. I'll be back later this week. I'm going to do a giveaway. I'm going to do a vintage Power of the Force coin giveaway in a Kenner market update, so be on the lookout for that. I'm sure I'll come up with some other ideas for videos here soon. But thank you so much for watching, and I'll be back soon.